love you again. Hate you when they love you, then they hate you again. Dog.
Hold me tight, let me go. Feel my heart.
Now take me back to the start. If you had to explain your life in 5 minutes, what would you say?
In 5 minutes, I would say growing up, I always kind of had the feeling I didn't want to live like a very ordinary life. Always was looking for things that were just a bit different, things that put more joy to myself, and was always kind of, didn't feel like the outcast of person, but more in the sense of always believing there's something different out there. And growing up with that, also a big topic in my life was money, always has been. My parents split up when I was pretty young, and therefore my mom was raising me and my brothers. And since she didn't have like a job at the time which was related to health issues at the time, that was just like a very ongoing topic, which over time just turned into something where I was like more like a enemy of, I would say, in the sense of that I was like, I want to beat the boss, and the boss was kind of money, like beating the boss to then enjoy life at in a different style, in a different way, and just make sure like this is not an issue for me or like people that are close to me anymore. And I think that has been like a very early time fuel for me. Also like trying to or wanting to take care of the people around me, because I think there was like no other person in my life at the time. So I quickly, I don't know, I think my brain just quickly started being open and interested about like money itself, like how it works, how things work to get money. And then like my first attempt, or not my first attempt, but the first thing that got me into making money was gaming back then, which was probably when I was like 6 or 8 years old, like starting the first games, and then recording Minecraft video probably when I was, I think, 11 or 12 years old, which back then took off, which was like 10,000 views. I mean, for just Germany, that was quite a bit. And I was like trying to tell my mom that I can make money off it. And there was just like one thing she didn't trust, and it was back at the time, was PayPal. And she was like, I'm not going to sign up for PayPal, it's not legit. So that quickly faded away. I kept doing some videos, but not like as recent, I would say, or just not as consistent, because there was like a lot of like different stuff going on as well. But it just kept evolving my mind around the money topic, and then quickly kind of like understanding probably like early stages of marketing, or like what attracts people. Like one thing worked, then the other thing might work as well, and then putting out like the same kind of videos. Went back deep into gaming for a couple of years without pushing it much further, and then I think a big shift happened in like when I was 16, turning the gaming side more into like the personal development side. Like
what games you play?
Was Minecraft was a big one until probably like 13, 14. Then it turned into League of Legends, big time. Like I didn't play at the finals, but I was like going to watch the finals. Like I was very socially awkward and anxious, I would say. But that got me out of my comfort zone going out. But these were like the main two big ones. Also did a YouTube channel about League of Legends, but that's a different story. But there was always the interest in like just putting something out there, content, because at the time, like playing a lot of video games, you were like watching a lot of streams, but also like YouTubers that were just like coming up, and it gave me like a lot of entertainment, but also like a lot of like education, where nowadays it's still happening, but just at like a way better, more filtered kind of stage, I would say. You obviously still have like a lot of trash, but nowadays there's like insane education out there.
You'd be so surprised how many of Art of Mondays members have a Minecraft story. Like I was making Minecraft videos at 12 or 13, and I've just really seen that crossover with people that are high performers in business, typically are high performers in other areas of their life, whether that's gaming or sports or something like that. So you're not alone, but that's a cool, integral part of the story. Keep going.
That's interesting. I have a good friend, he was also playing League of Legends at the same time, similar kind of like status, which is so funny. We met in Cape Town last year. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
So that was like a big part, and then it turned into like self-development at the time, like 16, which got the addiction away from gaming so quickly for some reason, which I'm really grateful for. And then it was like the time where you kind of finish high school, and I was like definitely sure I didn't want to do like an ordinary path. So I did what most of the Germans do. They escaped Germany for a couple months or years to backpacking or work and travel in Australia. Took all the money I had at the time, pushed it on there, always like with the mentality, with the money I had, pushing it forward to the future or a life I want to have. Even though I didn't have a lot of money and there was like not a lot of backup, I kind of knew I would make it work no matter what. Like if you just push it and you give yourself enough like room to exploit opportunities, and it just takes you out of the comfort zone. So I always like put my mind into that and spend like money forward, if that makes sense. Doing that for 2 years, back and forth, farm work, construction work, hospitality, pretty much all of it over there, gave me like a lot of, I would say, work ethic in terms of like also being like appreciating life even more, especially nowadays when you work like online. But first of all, just getting out of the country and understanding how much difference it makes to be in a different environment, because back home, I mean, there were just a lot of, I call them more like distractions in that sense. Of course, you have family and friends at home, but you still have like your surrounding that you normally don't really put yourself into. Like you get put into the surroundings and then you kind of like have to escape to first of all understand if you want it. And if you want it, you can always go back. But if you like the other place more, I think it's worth it exploiting it.
So such a similar story to me so far as like gaming into self-development, into removing yourself from your current environment and going somewhere new, and then all of those just propelling you into future momentum. So what happened next?
So that was like the big tipping point, was kind of like coming back and being like, okay, what do I want to do? I like kind of like university on the one side, and the other side was just doing like an apprenticeship, but in like an industry where I go to, like, or I wanted to go to and had understanding about already, which was like e-commerce. And so I decided to go for e-commerce, and then pretty much COVID hit and kind of trajected me forward into starting like a side job next to my apprenticeship, where I just cold DM'd the person out of my city that was like entertaining or is like a car enthusiast. And I was just like, do you want to shoot some stuff? Because I picked up a camera like a couple of weeks earlier overseas. And I was like, this is too boring at home. Like I want to do stuff. And we quickly met, I think like the next day, and we're like talking, discussing, and he had like the matter expertise and like cars. And I was like, great network, great setup, we should put that on YouTube. So we like came together, partnered on a YouTube channel, did that for pretty much 2 years, building 2 shops behind it, one for clothing and the other one for car parts behind it. And then also doing events in later stages of the project. But for me, it was more like I wanted to get more financial freedom. So I chose a model where I would have better cash flow sooner, or where I can, because I think like my mind is very, like I like to test myself, and I think it's easier to test yourself when it's just you in a business. Whereas if you have a business with a partner, both works. But for me at the time, I was just like with the freedom I wanted in terms of like not being like having to stay in like one area. That was the path that I chose in terms of where I wanted to take the business from. And then I started an agency in e-commerce development and online marketing, like classic socials at the time, and pretty much did that for 2 years, or longer than 2 years actually, yeah.
And now what are you doing?
Now I help people become self-employed through government funding, especially or currently just in Germany.
I think that's, you say it very simply, I think it's very noble, because you're essentially helping people in 9-to-5s go through and start their own business and have the government fund that, get grants and funding for it. And effectively the way you've set it up too is the government pays you, right, and then you help these people for free. So you're essentially coaching people for free to create freedom in their lives. I think that's the coolest thing ever.
Pretty much. That's also like one part why I switched from the agency model to this business, because I got the grant myself, I think about 4 years ago now, like when I was like very early stage. And I think it's just like a very good thing to give something back. And it's like very, very fulfilling understanding, like for me personally, understanding where you're coming from, and that there's like a lot of people at like a very similar stage, and you help them in probably one of their most important times in their life, like very emotional phases, like the step you do, and just make sure they have like somewhat of wiggle room to the bottom, but still have the pressure behind it to push to achieve what they want to achieve.
And so now, I know there's a lot in progress and still happening, but how much government funding have you raised for these people in Australian dollars?
In Australian dollars, it's probably around 1 million Australian dollars right now.
Yeah, amazing. And also a really interesting journey. I mean, you came from not a lot, it sounds like, and you went through money struggles, you kind of came out the other side, rewiring that in your brain. What's been your biggest challenge throughout that process?
It was the mindset around money, because it was always like such a emotional thing where it was very difficult to just extract the emotional part. And of course you need to make, like you need food and stuff on the table, to actually using it as a vehicle and like a resource to get where you want to be in your life.
And how do you work through it? How do you overcome? Because I want to touch on it because it's such a common thing for a lot of people who grew up with not a lot. It's a huge block for people. They hit a ceiling and they bounce back down. They hit a ceiling, they self-sabotage. So how did you overcome your limiting beliefs around money to break through and have the freedom in your life now?
I think probably one of the biggest parts is belief, but in like a good sense, that if you spend money at the right place, like not where you want to like flex or show off, but where you want to learn, where you think you might meet new people or like people that bring more into your life than they take from you. I think that was like a big factor, and also like using the money, like keeping fixed costs low, so you have not like unlimited money, but like you have way more money if you settle for like way less in your day-to-day life, because then you're way more flexible in opportunities that arrive. And I think that always helped me, making sure taking care of your fixed costs, but then also taking advantage of situations that come.
Okay, so be smart about your spending, especially when you don't have a lot of money, and the money you do get, invest in yourself essentially and back yourself.
And like that's like actually how I think I generated more money over time. But the other part, which is also like connected to the emotion part, is just being surrounded by people that have way different amounts of money than you, and like making these things very normal in terms of like fancy cars, talking with people, like even like, I mean, you're technically an influencer, just normalizing everything. It's like, I don't think it's very easy, but at the end of the day you realize it doesn't really matter, because people that have the money understand it's just like materialistic stuff, and they still see you as a person. I think at least that's like my experience. And same for like people that are working online, you still have your normal life at the end of the day. And I think normalizing that and just trying to be surrounded by that, by spending the money in the right places, makes it way more available for you. And you would be surprised how many people are actually happy to help you if you ask them.
Yeah, totally. So but it does line up with my next question, which is, this feels like a bit of a full circle moment, because you came across me on YouTube however many months ago. Yep. Now we're sitting here together filming for YouTube months later. How did you first come into the scene, find out about me and Art of Mondays?
It was just it was the algorithm, good old YouTube algorithm picking up on my interests. And I just saw the video of Lombok, I think, which is pretty funny, and then I was like, that's pretty sick. And you just didn't give the impression of the classic Dubai lifestyle, which, I don't know, maybe for some people it's what they want, but for me it was always more about the experience and like surfing and having like the combination of the driving for something, making money along the way, but also utilizing the money you make in like different areas to like give back, I would say.
And I imagine that was the pull for you to come out to Lombok, to the residency that we've been on. And what did you get from that? What have you got from that so far?
Good connections, like in terms of meeting other people, understanding that this can also be used as like a lever for getting closer to people, closer to people that understand you, because everyone has like some sort of, or most of them, I would say almost all of them have like some sort of struggle, and that's why they became entrepreneurs. I think it's always a lack of something, that's why you become something. So I think just the network is a big part, but also just like learning in terms of different skill sets.
Okay, change gears a little bit. What is the greatest piece of advice that you've received in your journey?
The best piece of advice I think I've gotten along the way is to put yourself into situations where you have to take action, like forced action taking. It's just one thing you have to do now, and it's like so many things that have to happen after. And if you go for it, like it just opens so many doors.
What's an example?
I mean, one thing was Australia, just going there and understanding what other world is kind of out there. Second thing was going to Cape Town a couple of years back, meeting one of my mentors, making a lot of things possible today in terms of like learning, and I think that's the biggest one.
And so by booking that one-way flight, landing that place with no connections, no people, no experience, no opportunities, you were forced to then take action and make those things a reality, right?
Yeah, take one action, tell a couple of people about it, so you can't back off.
I like that.
And that's, I mean, if you want to stand your word, and I think that's one of your values, that you want to get, that people should respect what you say, and you want to be respected by them, and they should be able to trust you. I think if you do that, say something and you stick to it, then a lot of things can happen.
There's an argument on both sides of that, which is if you tell people about wanting to do something, you have the same dopamine that fires, so it can be counterintuitive because you get that feedback loop without actually having to do the thing. But I also agree with your point, which is that if you're true to yourself and loyal and trust yourself, then it's a huge accountability piece, because you're telling someone what your plans are, and then you have to hold yourself to that. Yeah. And then you take the action, like you said.
I think it's probably best to just tell the things that are like the big action takers, not the ones that follow, because that's easy to be held accountable to. And I think that's not the biggest like dopamine hit. You can just so many times say, I'm going here, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
If you don't get lost in the details, I think the dopamine spike isn't as big.
Yeah. Yeah. And how can people connect with you?
People can connect with me over my website or just my Instagram.
Which is?
My Instagram is Dustin_RTH.
Put it on the screen. Thanks
Fuck,
for coming
man.
out, dude. Great to spend some time. Oh, that was pretty good. Epic, man.